In this lesson, I want to steer you around some of the pitfalls that are involved with virtual components combined with in-context design. First of all, open up a new assembly from one of your Infinite Skills assembly templates, and on the front plane of that assembly, create a new sketch like this. I just have 3 rectangles stacked on top of one another. The dimensions are not important. What we're going to do first is we're going to demonstrate the problem, and then second, we're going to show you how to avoid the problem. I think you need to understand the problem so you know that there's something that needs to be avoided in the combination between virtual components, which are meant to be an easy way of working, and top-down design, which is also meant to be an easy way of working. When you combine these two, you have to work in a certain way or you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. You're going to lose a lot of work. Currently, we've got an unsaved assembly, and let's insert a component, new part, and put it on the front plane. So we have an unsaved assembly, and now we have an unsaved virtual component. Now right-click on one of the lines in the sketch and say Select Chain, and then Convert Entities. So now you've just created an in-context relation between the sketch in your new part and the sketch in the assembly. You can take this sketch and extrude it. This step isn't really necessary, but it will help the demonstration. So now we've got a part and an assembly. Let's get out of part edit mode. And we realize all of a sudden that we need to save the assembly. So let's go to the save icon, and I'm just going to save this to my desktop. And I'm going to call this Don't Do This. Okay, now SolidWorks is going to come right up and tell me that just saving this assembly is going to cause other parts to go out of context. So if I save assembly 2, then part 1, which is still a virtual part, is going to go out of context. This is very hard to believe. It's got to be a huge bug in the software because part 1 is internal to the assembly. So there really shouldn't be any way that it should be able to go out of context, but that's what's going to happen. If you say OK on this, regardless whether you say save internally or save externally, you're going to go out of context. So we say, okay, now we see that this is out of context. That means that if we go back to this original sketch and make a change here, that the part we just created in context is not going to update. In order to avoid this really huge bug in SolidWorks file management, what you need to do is save the assembly first. Okay, let's delete this part. Let's just create a new assembly. Copy the sketch that you've got, click on it in the feature manager and Control-C, create a new assembly, click on the front plane and Control-V. Now edit the sketch, optionally lock it down to something so it's fully defined. And now save the assembly. So we'll say save, do it this way. Now that you've got it saved, you're okay. So go to Insert, Component, New Part, Front. You got part 2 here with the sketch open. Right click, select chain, convert entities, extrude, set at the mid plane, however you want to do this. Now we're in the part, so we'll exit the part, Control Q to get rid of the rebuild symbols, double click on the sketch. If you've got dimensions in here, use them to change it. If not, you'll have to go back into the sketch and change. Now you can see that driving this sketch has changed the part itself. That's the way it should be. This part is still in context. We can see by the symbol here. And it's a virtual component, which we can see by the way it's named. We can right click and save the part and call this the in context part. And okay. So now you've done it correctly. You save the assembly first and then create your in context relations. It's just a habit that you need to get into to make sure that you save the assembly first. Otherwise, your assembly is going to be stuck with a name like asem1 or something like that. If you do want to change the name of the assembly, then we have to follow the instructions. And let's see what those instructions are again. We go to File, Save As, and give it a different name. I'll just add a 1 to the name, and then say Save. SOLIDWORKS is giving us instructions on how to change the name of the assembly and keep the in-context relations. So what it's saying to do here is to cancel out of this dialog and then click on the References button and input the new names for the parts to go along with the new name for the assembly. So we'll go ahead and cancel References in context part. We'll rename this to in context part 1 and then say save all. Now we've got our new assembly, do it this way 1, and our new part in context part 1, where the new part is still in context rather than having fallen out of context. This is possibly a confusing topic, but the main thing you need to remember is when you're using virtual components and in-context design together, make sure to save your assembly before you create any in-context relations.